These are my main card predictions for the UFC 318 BMF card this weekend. Let's get straight into it. Let's be real, this is a bit of a mid card. It's not as bad as UFC 312 or UFC 315. They were some stinkers, but it's not exactly UFC 300. My issue with this card is it just feels like there's no storyline, and it really feels like a lot of these matchups were kind of thrown together last minute. I'm not sure why Michael Johnson or Daniel Zellhuber is on the main card, or why Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov is the co-main event, but we move. As expected, the press conference was a bit of a snoozer. For some reason, we had Paulo Costa acting really sus. If I had to guess, he was doing the Conor McGregor workout under the table. But anyway, let's get straight into my predictions. Kicking off the main event as the featured fight, we've got Michael Johnson versus Daniel Zellhuber, aka me. I believe that Daniel Zellhuber will get the win by unanimous decision, or I could even see a KO. When I was really looking into this fight, I was extremely shocked when I saw that Michael Johnson has 19 losses on his record. His win-loss record is almost breaking even. He is riding a 2-fight win streak while his opponent is coming off a loss. That being said though, he did lose against an opponent that was young and is actually pretty decent. I think the biggest X factor in this fight will be the age difference. Obviously Michael Johnson is well out of his prime now and edging retirement, if we're being honest. I believe Zellhuber is 24 years old. I can't believe he's younger than me. Zellhuber's not really known for his KO power. A lot of his wins have came by decision. He's a bit of a decision merchant. That being said though, he has a very slick and exciting fighting style. The only way I see Michael Johnson winning this fight is by a KO, but I think because of the reach advantage that his opponent has, it'll be hard for him to really step in and close that distance. Like if you look at a lot of Michael Johnson's wins, it came by him stepping into that firing range and landing a big shot, especially off a counter right after his opponent throws. But I really don't think that's going to be the case this fight. I really think the reach advantage will be too much for him. I think after this fight, we may have to send him to retirement. Props to Michael Johnson for making this, resurgence of his career, but unfortunately, we will be watching your downfall. Next up, we've got Dan Ige versus Pitbull. I've got Dan Ige by brutal KO, absolutely sleeps him. I just want to quickly mention how boring Pitbull is at UFC press conferences. I feel like Dana's absolutely fuming the fact that he brought Pitbull into the UFC. He thought he'd be this exciting fighter that, could make a run at the title, or at the very least would be exciting for the fans. But anytime he picks up a microphone, bro, I'm ready to leave. I do think Pitbull will do a lot better in this fight than he did against Yair. I think he really struggled with that matchup because of the height advantage and the reach advantage that Yair had against him. But in this matchup, Dan Ige and Pitbull, they both have very similar fighting styles, same height, same reach. But the real X factor in this fight is Dan Ige's KO power. I think he really gets underestimated a lot, especially when you look at how brutal his KOs are. He's just incredibly calm when he's in the octagon. It's really scary, man. He looks like he's just waiting in line at McDonald's and then just lands a big KO the next second. I don't know how he does it. I would say Pitbull's key to victory is, by just rushing Dan Ige and trying to put the pressure on him and put him on the back foot. But that being said, I feel like he's just going to run into a big shot and go to sleep. It's also worth noting that Dan Ige's never been KO'd. All of his losses have came by a decision. And again, I think Dan Ige's youth and his KO power in this fight will really give him those advantages. I'm sorry to have to do this to Pitbull. Me and him, we share the same birthday, so I'm sorry. But my brother, you are going to sleep. All right, the next matchup, Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. D-Rod, Kevin Holland by submission or TKO. D-Rod has been subbed by a Dust choke, and I think that's Kevin Holland's, go-to favorite submission. To be honest, this is kind of one of those fights where I feel like it really just got thrown together last minute. No one was really clamoring for this fight. I personally would have preferred to see, Kevin Holland versus Kobe Covington. I think with the hype that Kevin Holland has now again, that would have been the perfect matchup. Even when he wins, I don't think that this fight will really do much for him in terms of rankings and even star power. It also feels like Kevin Holland is a lot older than he is. He's 32 years old, which is the age that fighters typically start to hit their prime. I think it's just because of how active he is in the UFC that it feels like he's been fighting forever. I do think this fight though will deliver in the octagon. I think it could be one of those fights that gets fight of the night. They are both riding a 2-fight win streak, and I think since Kevin Holland started winning fights again, he's gotten less salty, which is a really refreshing thing to see because salty Kevin Holland was not a very enjoyable Kevin Holland to watch. I can really see this fight being on the feet majority of the time, but I do think that Kevin Holland will land a big shot, knock D-Rod down, and that's when I think Kevin Holland will wrap up the Dast choke. Moving on to the co-main event. I can't believe it's a co-main event. I also think this is 3 rounds, which Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. I believe that Roman Kopylov gets this win by TKO in the later rounds. I initially thought this fight was 5 rounds, but apparently it's 3 rounds, which to be honest, I think really saves Paulo Costa, because if this was 5 rounds, I could see him getting tired by the 3rd round, especially just with his inactivity, and he's a bit of a mouth breather in there. Looking at this fight, Costa's won one of his last 5 matchups. Roman's fresh off a KO win over Chris Curtis. Not really a grade A level opponent, but still a decent win. I really think the X factor in this fight will be Paulo Costa's lack of cardio. We see it in all of his fights. Even though he's durable, as soon as that third round starts, he's taking deep breaths out of his mouth and you start to really see him slow down. He might land 1 or 2 big shots, but really how he loses a lot of his fights is just lack of volume in those later rounds. He could have beat both Strickland and even Whitaker if he had just been more active in those later rounds. When you look at Roman Kopylov's record, a lot of his wins, especially the KO wins, have came in the later stages of the fight, towards the end of round 2 or even round 3. And like I said, I think that's when Paulo Costa will really start to slow down and gas. So that lines up perfectly. Again, I really thought Roman Kopylov was in his 20s. I did not know he was 34 years old. Bro is an unk. They are the same age. Why does he look so young, bro? So that's my pick for the co-main event. Now moving on to the main event of the evening for the BMF title, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier, the battle of the saltiness. I made an in-depth video and gave my prediction on this in my last video, but I'm going Dustin Poirier by round 4 TKO. I know a lot of people are writing Dustin off because this is his retirement fight and he's in the later stages of his career, while Max is still relatively young. But I think when breaking down these fights, you've got to go by logic. And even though their last fight was 6 years ago, their fighting style has not changed very much at all. They are both very boxing heavy and like to trade in the pocket. I think Max Holloway has gotten better at that, you know, at keeping the distance and fighting at range. Even though Dustin Poirier is at the tail end of his career, I still think he's got it, man. Like, his last fight was against Islam Makhachev, pound for pound #1 at the time, and he stood toe to toe with him and gave Islam a war. And that was even with the threat of takedowns. All of that aside, I think the true X factor of this fight is Max Holloway coming off a brutal KO loss 8 months ago against Ilia Topuria. We've never seen Max get knocked out, so we have nothing to go off to see how he recovers in his next fight. Like I said in my last video, I don't like seeing how Max has kind of handled that loss. He's been a bit salty and not his usual self. Also, you know me, I love the prophecy. Dustin Poirier has never lost 2 fights in a row, and I really don't think it's going to start now. The way that Dustin Poirier will win this fight is by utilizing those calf kicks and body shots. We saw him really rip to the body against Islam Makhachev, and obviously he's known for his calf kicks. We saw it work really well against Conor McGregor. I think a lot of people are looking at this fight and expecting it to play out the same way that the Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje fight played out, but Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje are completely different fighters. Dustin is a lot more defensively sound, and he knows how to mix up his targets. That's why I think those leg kicks will be extremely effective. I think Dustin will go to the head, to the body, and then to the legs, rather than just winging wild leg kicks like Justin Gaethje does. You can see that coming from a mile away, man. I think the accumulation of shots to the body and to the legs will really wear on Max in the later rounds. That's why I truly do believe that Dustin Poirier will TKO Max in that 4th round. But yeah, those are my predictions. Let me know what you guys think of my picks and what are your picks. Make sure you guys drop a comment and drop a like on this video. Make sure to subscribe as well. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.